Ladies and gentlemen, filmmakers and moviegoers alike, welcome to this week's episode of Critic the Casual. I'm your host, Srekcuf5, and joining me as always... Oh,
I have a correction.
what's that?
It's this week.
Where did I miss? What did I miss?
It's in your tweet. I just noticed it.
Oh, there it is. The second this out of the three this. I see. So, yeah, I see.
So it's this week.
I just wanted to put a lot of this in the week, so, had to throw some originality in there somewhere. So, yes.
That's what happened.
There we go. So, yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Critic the Casual. He's Dev. I'm Steven. Not Soy. Sometimes it happens. People get us confused. But, welcome to Critic the Casual, where this week we're talking about all the childhood wonder and all the games we used to play as kids with Would You Rather and Ready or Not. Any last words here, Dev, before we really start playing around and talk about what's going on?
Really?
Yeah.
I hate it.
You get your dumb intros, and I get mine too.
At least mine makes sense.
Mine are literally just strung together with words that sound like they could work. Let's just get going. And I could ask you if you'd want a choice, but that'd just be too obvious at this point. We're gonna review Would You Rather first. For all those who aren't watching and are just listening, you can see or hear Dev face palming really quietly in the background. All right. So, Would You Rather? Dev, do you have anything you'd like to say here about Would You Rather? Do you have any first words? Final words, maybe?
I mean, usually you start out. You don't usually just gun-ho into me.
I wanted to give you an option to talk. I can start and say something, if you prefer.
That's usually how it goes. I just don't normally start out.
All right, I was giving you the whatever. I'll go first this time. So, this movie, Would You Rather? Basically, for those of you who don't know, it's a game where you get asked one question. Would you rather do this or would you rather do that? Here, this movie, it's taken a little bit to the extreme, and I ultimately have to say I kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty nice. Like, well, not nice, of course, but there were things in the movie that I actually liked. There were many things in the movie that I didn't like, but if
The ADR sucked.
yes, the ADR was
This
pretty
is the
bad.
first film that I've noticed bad ADR.
One of the
From all the films we've had.
you were just saying like the timing was off on things, or
Well, the audio just didn't feel right.
okay.
Like, it felt like they were talking into a microphone.
I didn't really notice that, but it was probably because I wasn't focusing on that in all honesty. But there were times that I thought the sound was a little muffled, but I wouldn't, yeah.
Like, the sound didn't change no matter where the camera was looking at them from.
Okay.
If someone was speaking, the volume was their volume, no matter what.
I get what you're saying. It doesn't even matter if they were talking like this or if they were talking like this. It was always just the same volume.
No, more that, like, no, well, sort of.
Well, I mean, like...
No, I'm more saying, like, it sounded like the camera could be, where it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no matter where my face was in the camera, it always sounded like this. Even if you moved all the way around my head, it was just a constant same sound no matter what. The camera could be doing 360s around me, which normally would mean that you audio with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it did.
See, that's something where that's I would say it works best for the surround sound and like the big multi-purpose theaters, but like it's weird because I agree with you that it should do that if it's supposed to be a big production movie, but I also don't think it has to, depending on movies. Like this movie, I was fine with it not moving around with the camera, only because everything takes place in one spot.
I'm more saying that like no matter where I'm getting the perspective.
I get that, but I'm also just replying that even if I was here and I sounded like this, and even if I was all the way back here and I still sounded like this, like to me that doesn't really matter in this movie, only because the point of this movie is to get like, well, at least what I saw in this movie, like the whole point is to get this room to have this feeling, and if it happens in the room, it should be heard and easily understood by the audience.
Well, yes, but I mean, I agree that like from the perspective that we have from our protagonist, yes, but my counter is that the fact that like when you don't change how the audio is from different like angles and stuff like that, it doesn't feel natural. Like the audio, like no matter how many people were in or out of the room, what was in the room, what wasn't in the room, the audio sounded the same. I mean, when people talked about,
I think. Are you mentioning like the scream at all with her through the basement? Is that one moment that you're thinking of, or?
Well, kind of, but I'm more talking about like in the room itself.
Okay.
The audio stays the same no matter what, mm-hmm. But that's not how audio works, mm-hmm. And your brain picks up on that.
But I don't. Yes, but. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think the point of this movie is to be realistic. It's to be sensational.
Well, no, but it's one of those things that can pull someone out.
I guess if you're being picky, in this instance, I wasn't being picky about that. Like, I honestly didn't even pay attention to that when it came to the sounds. I could see how it could be a problem for some people. That's 100% for sure.
Well, did you watch it with headphones on?
No.
I did.
Okay. I listened to it in the living room on Netflix and the big loud speakers. So I liked it.
Well, it felt mono is the problem. Which, even if you're a lower budget film, having just mono sound doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Because like having no movement with your sound makes the entire thing feel like it's not. It makes it feel like nothing's moving.
I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm just not gonna agree with you in this instance. Like, I could see how that can be a problem. I absolutely can see that as a problem for some people. It's just one problem that I didn't entirely notice myself. So, and by that, I would have probably noticed it better if like the major scenes where like for instance the thing that I brought up with the scream, I did hear a difference in like how it was portrayed in shouts. But if it were for instance to be how like to the extremes that I'm relating it in my head to what you're saying, like it would be like she screams in the basement and then even and everybody in the house, even they show it somewhere else, it sounds exactly as it did in that basement. But I didn't really notice that. It was just something that I wasn't...
different. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in the room itself.
I get that still.
Like, outside of the room, the audio is better, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like, they muffle it through walls, and they do stuff to the audio to make it feel more natural.
Okay, but why would they... Most of the time, the audio in the room was either a conversation between two characters... or just a conversation between two characters. So, like, why would they make the volume of a person quieter if no matter what, it's just the people talking to each other?
Well, no, I don't mean it like that. I mean it more like it sounded like someone was recording their voiceovers.
Okay. And that's what every single movie is, but I get you.
Yes, I know. But it doesn't sound right,
okay.
Is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. Like, when they're in that room,
mm-hmm.
The recorded voiceover... sound correct.
Yes, I get that, and it was just like, something I didn't care about.
it sounds like it's recorded in a booth
Okay.
and just put over it instead of being sounded like it's, you know, how sound naturally would sound in that room. Like how my voice naturally sounds in this room. I'm not recording a booth. So like there's a bit of a, you know, you can hear a bit of.
Yeah, you can hear the distance and the echo in the room.
Yes.
But this is a movie where we need to understand crispy and cleanly what everybody is saying. It could be important what they're saying. So why add like these minor echoes and things if like why add the room tones and things if they're not really what's important and what's going on? Part of what I actually really liked about this movie is the silence and their lack of sound that they had, especially in the traumatic times, like right before they had to do something major
yeah,
to
that's
themselves.
different though. I'm more saying like for me personally, the audio issues with it bother me.
Okay.
This is like the third time I've watched it, and having watched more films, it bothers me because it can be done better than that. Because the fact of the matter is, you can have crisp audio with room echo.
Yes.
It's done.
Okay.
It's been done before.
I think we've reiterated the point that you just don't like the audio, but I'm still just not gonna 100% say like, yes, you're right. It's just an opinion on this point. Do you have any other things about the movie? That
it's way more boring than I remember.
There are a lot of boring, long, drawn-out scenes in it.
And just like, it's, I don't want to say it's not well acted, but...
Depending on who's on screen?
I mean, I will say, my boy, Envern, I can't pronounce his last name, Lucas, the character Lucas. He's our Marvel Boy of the Day, by the way. He played in Agent Carter.
Ooh.
He was Agent... Shit, I can't remember his agent's name. Where's Agent Carter? It was 2015, I think. Yeah. Sousa. He played Daniel Sousa from Agent Carter. The love interest character. My biggest thing is like they had John Hurt, the dad from Home Alone, just in it to die. There's other things in it too that like there's just, and that's really early. So it's not really a spoiler, but whatever. I don't know. It's for me the audio mixed with like the almost stagnant portrayals of these characters. That these characters are caricatures and not characters. Like,
yes,
they're one-dimensional placeholders for you to. This is this person. This is the morally incorruptible person. This is the very morally corrupt person. This is the gray person. This is the old woman. This is the alcoholic. This dude's the soldier.
Yeah.
This dude's the guy who thinks through everything. She is the one who, and this woman is and our protagonist is the character who will do anything for her brother.
Yes. They're
flat.
Yeah, they're all stereotypes. They're all pretty flat. A lot of this movie isn't like supposed to be character development or character driven. It's all supposed to be sensational. That's really what this movie is.
My problem with that is then every single one of the scenes is about the characters' motives, about why they're doing anything. Like the character Amy, when she's later in the movie, when she gets her last
her challenge
choice. That's how your husband died. It's just a throwaway line as character development, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's like, don't try to add character development into these characters or act like they're like there's more to them kind of thing. Because that's what our main baddie, Mr. Lambrick, kind of does.
Yeah, well,
like he tries to play into their personalities. But when your characters are very flat, which also adds to the fact that like that mono sound from everyone for me sticks out even further
Okay.
because everyone is so flat that like their voices come out flat too. There isn't a distinction to it. And it sounds like they're just recording in a booth, and they're
we get
like
that.
everything is very flat from just like a also acted point, which I don't think is really 100% the actor's fault, because I've seen some of these people in other shows, like Lawrence Gillard Jr., who played Dr. Brandon, who's Barden, played Bob in Walking Dead, who has one of the best scenes in Walking Dead before his character perishes.
Walking Dead spoilers.
I'll tell you how. Eddie Staples is in My Name is Earl, and does a great job in that show.
My Name is Earl. That was a funny.
And he knows how to act.
So,
Robin Lord Taylor is Cobblepot in Gotham, and he's not bad. He's not a bad actor. Like, a lot of these people know how to act and stuff like that, and it's just like, it's such a like, their characters are just so flat and one-dimensional that there's not much to go off of, in my opinion. Like, the only one who seems to stick out is Lucas, and that's just because he's so morally righteous. That he's always going to do the right thing no matter what in the situation, and he's always going to tell people to do the right thing in the situation, that he forces himself into every situation, which makes him stick out. Everyone else is just a passenger in this movie.
okay.
Lucas is the guy who actually acts throughout the film. He's the only one that sticks out, other than Mr. Lambrick, due to the fact that Mr. Lambrick is our villain. And a little bit Bevan, but Bevins is, Bevins, and he's
Bevins.
the British, he's the British MI6, ex-MI5, person who's, like, super into torturing, stuff like that. And his delivery is what makes him him very interesting. Like, him and Lambrick are interesting due to their delivery of their lines, and Luke is the same way, because he actually seems emotionally invested. Everyone else is like, man, this is really fucked up. Man, this is really fucked up. Or like, Amy's like, you see what you did there? You fucked up. Oh, you really think I wasn't gonna do that? That's just what everyone's reaction seems to be to the entire situation. And there doesn't seem to be, like, any differences between everyone, if that makes sense. Like, everyone kind of reacts to things the same way.
Okay. So, let me explain why I don't agree with you in most of these things. Only because, like yes, all these characters were pretty flat. But the point of this movie isn't to see these characters grow and develop and do their things. It is to, at least the way I saw the point of this movie, is to, like, shock and awe and make us tense. Like, they give us just enough information for each character to make it so we understand why this challenge for them is going to be difficult, or why they did this decision for this region, which, sure, a lot of them are stereotypes and flat lines, but that's not really the point of this movie. It's not to learn, like, about these characters. It's just show how twisted and sick Mr. Lambrix is, and do all the sick and crazy things. So, like, when it came to the characters doing all their stuff, like, and their reactions, like, the thing that I liked is just that they constantly showed the reactions, be it that they might have been the same thing. They didn't show the things happening because the reactions are what's important. Because, like, seeing the violence and the blood doesn't really matter to us because we can imagine that more gruesomely than they can portray it. And then when they show the aftermath, then it's like, oh my goodness, what happened? So it's supposed to be tension in that way. And even, like, the guy Lucas was actually one of my least favorite characters in this movie myself, because I always knew what he was going to do. The other characters I liked because they didn't know what they were going to do. Especially, like, the gambler dude. He was one of my favorites only because of, like, how he rationalized his thoughts. Not because, like, he was a good actor or his reactions were good or anything, but because how he came up with his decisions and why, like, and what led to those decisions because of it. Like, I thought that was really interesting. But that's also just because we were looking for different things in this movie. Like, I assume. Like, Well,
I will say also, I've seen this 3 times.
Yeah, this is my first time watching it.
And it doesn't get better upon more viewings.
No.
It gets far worse every viewing of this film. Because I notice more and more of its issues. Which may be part of my issue with it is I've seen it 3 times. And maybe upon your first viewing, I think that's why I liked this on my first viewing. I was like, oh wow, that was really, tense. But like, having watched it again, it's not that tense.
Yeah, it's definitely not thrilling. Like, I'm definitely not sitting there going like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? Oh!
Well, that's how you said you were reacting.
Well, in the moments when the tension started building up, yes. But the in-between moments where it's like, okay, let's communicate and come up with a plan. No, that's boring. Yes.
I think what's more just like, it's
overall,
it's been
the
done
pacing's
better in
slow.
other ways.
Yeah. Like, honestly, this movie has been done better in other ways. The next movie we're going to see is basically the exact same movie, just at least formatted movie, just with a different approach to it.
Well, I'm going to counter that with what I associate the next one with. But with this one, it's more for me the fact that, like, I like character-driven stories. Even my action films have a lot of character to them. That you can agree to that, right?
Sometimes they do. Like, not every action movie has the best character scenes, but yes.
No, but I'm saying the ones that we've been watching on here that I choose for action films tend to have some good story to it. Besides, like, the occasional, like, bullshit Hollywood just mega blockbuster like Hobbs and Shaw.
I was about to say, I'll give it to you every once in a while. Like, sure, nowadays action genre is very popular, so they have to give it more complex, more story in depth. So yeah, I could give you that. Yes, sure.
Well, I'm talking about, like, our Mission Impossibles are, like...
Well, no, I'm saying yes, Dev. I don't want to... Yes, you're correct. Keep going.
So, like, seeing a film that has just... I don't like cookie-cutter characters.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where they're just, like, the outlines of this is what this character is supposed to be. Especially when the plot seems to be talking about what their character is. For parts of it, you know what I mean? And that it's important to it. Like, this character's decision making is based off of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And where it's just like it doesn't feel human.
Okay. So, like, for instance, I'm gonna ask with the character Amy, like, when we got to her right before her final challenge, what did you think? Like, of course, Lambert explains her little backstory, and you said that you didn't like that. But ultimately, would you say that whole sequence with everything happening with Amy, would you say you didn't enjoy that?
Are you talking about, like, with
the barrel and everything?
About...
Like, yeah.
Well, I mean, it didn't really...
Go ahead.
I mean, that was just in it because that's what the movie's supposed to do. I expect those to be in it, those kind of things, because that's what the film is. I'm more talking about the, the characters themselves. There's no reason to care about the characters.
Like, essentially, yes. The only character we're supposed to care about in this movie is Iris.
And I don't really care.
Okay, then...
She's very flat. She's very boring. She's not... She reacts to... She's so passive to everything until the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, she's... Like... She gives up on some of her moral high ground almost immediately in the film. So, like, you're kind of like, okay, this character just really doesn't... is more of just, like...
Well...
background.
I'm trying to... Imagine that you're in her situation, Dev. Like, you're going to this dinner, and you have somebody who's literally saying, all right, drop your moral obligations for $10,000. Cool. All right, now you're in the game. I'm literally going to kill you unless you do what I say. You have to sit here and do exactly as I say, or else I'm going to kill you.
Well, you see, I wouldn't end up in that situation in the fucking first place.
Well, yes, but theoretically, if you did end up in that situation, do you really think you'd be the person who'd be like, yes, I have character and backstory, and let me explain it to you with this gun in my forehead? Yes. Like, because that's kind of, I don't see, like, I could see in some movies how
Okay.
that's important. Yes. But in this
Okay,
movie, I
but the
don't think
problem
it's
and the
important.
problem is they try to play off of that too much, in my opinion.
Okay.
Those characters like traits, but
Hmm.
we don't know the characters' traits until they talk about the like hint. Like they just be like, "Oh, you're kind of like this."
Hmm.
Like it's it's exposition every time they bring it up, and then that character has that trait.
Hmm. Well, I'd say that sometimes yes and sometimes no. Like with Sasha Grey and her character, when like her last challenge happens, and well, technically it's everybody's second to last slash last challenge. So like, I thought like I enjoyed it because she was reacting more than the others. Like, sure, it was subtle, but she couldn't even look. And every other time, she's like the first one just staring people in the eye, and they made sure to notice that kind of stuff. But then later on, she's like, she can't do this, and then they explain why. And I thought, hey, that's kind of cute. Some of the explanation in Black Story is kind of interesting, like the one with Sasha, Amy. I liked. Other times, it can
Well,
absolutely be unneeded and
it's one
unnecessary.
line and it's not needed. It seems so trivial because like it doesn't matter to anything else with this character because of it hasn't mattered until that moment.
Well, I mean, it also doesn't like yes, essentially, it hasn't mattered until that moment, but it also explains what happens in the next moment too. Like
Well, yes, but
even with like Travis, the other character, what happens with him, and like it's all explained to me just because they tell us that he's a soldier. He does as told and does what's morally right, and that's it. And like that's what happens to like what happens to him, and like that just made sense to me. But however, because of what happens, like I wasn't expecting anything different. And in that instance, sure, I agree with you. Like it was absolutely boring and like it had no reason for any explanation other than you're a soldier, right? Yeah, but he was a soldier. Well, okay. And like that's the only reason why all that stuff has made sense. So in some instances I will agree with you again. I think it's not every instance that this movie is bad at it, but like every once in a while there's like something that they do well. Most of the time, though, you're correct, and it's just not quite perfect. It's not good.
well, I'm not asking for perfection. I'm
Yeah.
asking that it actually like it just doesn't feel like it cares is what I'm trying to say. Like
Hmm.
when it tries to bring up something like that, it's like, "Oh, this is this because of this slight little hint into your life outside of this."
Hmm.
Like, "Oh, you're not drinking because you're an alcoholic. Here's this drink. Oh, you're also, irrational when you do drink," kind of thing. Like, I don't know. It just like the things that would make the character a character don't happen until like Lambrick says that that's something that that character does or something important to that character. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter until Lambrick says so,
Hmm.
which
But,
isn't how you create characters. You create characters that follow Simon Says.
hmm. Which I mean, that's ultimately what I think this movie is supposed to be. Like, it's kind of like when I rambled and ranted about how I hated Infinity War because it turns all of the heroes into caricatures of what they were supposed to be. How? Let me finish. Don't argue quite yet. I saw it coming. However, many people disagreed with me, including professional movie critics, because they said the point of that movie isn't the character development and like what happens between the Avengers. It's what happens with Thanos and his story. And Thanos' story went very well, so most people really appreciated that movie. And that's what I think this movie and your problem is that this isn't a character movie, it's a setting movie. It's supposed to be about this one really dramatic thing. And sure, it fails
Well,
at that one dramatic thing, but
then yeah,
but the
because I don't.
characters aren't the focus.
Well, fair, but even in Avengers: Infinity War, there's a character of focus,
There's
which
at
is
least one,
Thanos.
yes.
He's our quote unquote protagonist in
And,
that film,
and in this movie, our character of focus is Iris. And
who is boring and does nothing.
she changes and she adapts to the situation. She like sure
By being
sometimes she
essentially
like sometimes she does this told yes, but eventually at the end of the movie she changes and she overcomes her situation.
But well, yeah,
Just not very well.
no, and it's just that she doesn't do anything the rest of the film.
Okay.
The only thing she does the rest of the film of her own choice that makes a real difference is choosing to shock herself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing she does that's morally good. The rest of it, she doesn't have a choice in choosing a moral dilemma. The rest of it's stab person or whip person. Mm-hmm. The rest of it is, this either barrel for me or have, all of this thing happen or have random card happen to me, right? There's no choice in it no matter what. It's like, it's either, there's no, like, dilemma. It's no matter what, something's either happening to me or happening to someone else, except for that one time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't really, in my opinion, create a would you rather dilemma.
Okay.
It's more of a what do you want to happen to you or said people kind of dilemma, okay. Which is a would you rather scenario technically, but it doesn't really create a moral dilemma, which what this movie seems to be trying to set up early on in the film with the steak scene and the alcohol scene and the electrocution scene, which sets up that moral dilemma of would you do this to another person or would you break your essentially a vow you've taken for more money kind of things. And it doesn't matter after the first round. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter at all. Your moral compass is out the window because unless you're fucking Lucas, who's over here like, hey, do this because this is why. Because he's obviously a doctor of some sort and he understands the situation. Mm-hmm. So he's able, he's our moral compass of the film. And he's the only one who's doing anything. And he feels more like the protagonist than our protagonist because she's just sitting there in these not so morally choice situations, just leaning back half the film. There's an entire scene where you don't see her when the camera starts because she's behind Cal. You don't see her when it enters the film. I'm like, oh, wait, is she there or did they like reshoot the scene and she wasn't available kind of thing? But like the camera just slightly moves enough or Cal moves slightly enough back that I see a little bit of blonde. I'm like, oh, she's there. It's just terribly shot because our protagonist isn't even there. Which, like, if your protagonist doesn't show up in an entire scene that like she's supposed to be the character we care about
I get you.
Or have reason to be connected to, but she's not doing anything to feel a connection to. She feels like more of a passenger character, which we've talked about in other films, that when we have passenger characters, they don't feel as good. Like Hellboy. Hellboy was fucking awful because Hellboy was just a passenger throughout his film. Those films aren't enjoyable.
Can I ask you a question that's kind of irrelevant, but also relevant? What is your opinion on the Five Nights at Freddy's games?
I haven't played them.
Okay.
But my opinion on them, like, I'll say this, they have a deep lore, which makes them interesting. Personally, I don't like
the gameplay is more what I'm hoping of. Like, what did you think of the gameplay as someone who's either watched Let's Plays or, like, just heard about people talk about it?
From seeing it, it's just kind of repetitive stuff, right? Okay. And, like, and there's a difference between a passenger in a game and a passenger in a movie.
I'm
going to say that right now.
Okay. Because, because even as a passenger... But yes, I understand
because you still have to interact as the passenger in a Five Nights at Freddy game. You have to choose when to use your power. You have to choose when to do these things, right?
And I think
while Iris in the film doesn't choose to do anything because she's usually told what the best decision is throughout the film. Because like between the ice pick and the thing, like she's like. She's kind of told to choose the whip.
Okay. Yes. My thought here, like, it's both. I was asking about the Five Nights at Freddy things, of course, because like if you had told me that you enjoy Five Nights at Freddy's, I would have told you I don't. Then you're being kind of a hypocrite here, because that like I feel like the whole point of this movie, the whole reason why it even kind of works, is the fact that it takes away control. It's why Five Nights at Freddy's worked a lot of the times. It's because it takes away the control of the user. Like, they have to be stuck here, and they have to just deal with what's being thrown at them. And
and that's fair.
Secondly, I also thought of Twilight. Because what happens in Twilight is the main protagonist, Bella, the girl who's supposed to be the one who everyone likes, and the reason why Edward falls in love with her is because of her personality. However, Bella in the books and in the movie is a wet napkin. She's a person. She's almost. I won't say she's a Keanu Reeves, but she is so plain that literally anybody can portray themselves onto her. So, like, you can pretend that Edward Cullen is talking to you, and that's, like, supposed to get the hooks into you as a girl who's supposed to like Twilight. And that's why I think what this movie was kind of going for as well. They gave us backstory on why she's doing this, and why we should be interested in why she's doing this. But then they take away our ability to say, no, we can't do this, to amp up the tension, but also to put it so we can pretend that we're in her spot. And this movie may not do that well, sure, but I also don't think you're giving it some credit, because, like, I did like some of the things that this movie did.
Okay, and I'll say I was in your shoes at one point, because I did enjoy this film upon my first viewing. That's one of the reasons why I brought it up, because I'd only seen it twice. Upon my third viewing, like, that layer that you see now, by your third viewing, that goes away. Is what I'm trying to say.
But the question is, have you ever... Never mind. I was about to say, are you watching it like somebody who just likes watching movies? Or are you watching it as somebody who's analyzing the movies? Because, like...
Well, no, I'm not trying to analyze the film. But when you see the film enough times, there are certain things you pick up on and notice. Even just naturally. Like, Empire or Toy Story, films that I've seen so many times, I've picked up on things in there as I've, watched them more and more. Mind you, I still think those films are great. And even, like, I'll watch them again and probably find more things that I love in them. But on this, the things that I liked become less likable the more I watch it.
Okay.
There's a diminishing return to this film, which is a problem. Because it's a weird dilemma to have, because this is your first time watching it, this is my third time watching it. And it's a weird discussion to be having, but, like, upon my first time, there's a good return on it. Upon my later viewings, it's like, It's like watching the Matrix Reloaded or Matrix Revolutions. The first time through, they're not awful. Like, especially when you're younger watching them, right? But as you watch them later, that diminishing return happens, where you're like, man, that first one's just way better than these.
I get you.
It just, it loses some of that stuff that it's trying to act upon.
I get you.
If that makes sense.
So, I see. So I'll just say it, like, as the critic myself, being my one viewing, I just don't quite see that yet. I could see how it can be a problem in future viewings, though. So I get what you're talking about, for 100%.
Okay, I think that's the big thing. I think we're at a divide because I'm 2 viewings past you.
Yeah,
right now.
what it is like, yeah, I just have a base level of appreciation for it. It was okay, but, like, I'm sure if I watched it 2 or 3 more times as you have, I would trash talk it more.
And having me usually being the positive person on these films, being like, oh man, I did enjoy this film at one point, but now, like, having seen it at least 3 times,
I was actually just thinking to myself as we were talking about this stuff, and it's funny because a lot of the movies I actually, like, deeply analyze, and I think about plot structure and, like, how the story developed, are often the movies that you don't like, at least recently, where I'm like, oh, this was interesting, and I liked how it was formatted, and this, that, and that, and you're like, well, I don't like it because this, and some third reason, and I was like, I just find that kind of interesting. Like, it's not always the same exact reason.
What other movies have we done recently? I'm just trying to think of. I can't think of them right now.
Oh god damn it! Now I'm gonna search for my goddamn shit. Damn fucking unimportant. I'll talk about it afterward. It's just like overall in the past year, the past 8 months, in just general, I've noticed a cycle of whenever I think, hey, this seems like it could be formatted this way or whatever. It's just like the casual kicks in a little bit more, and I think what that is just because it's less exciting, less like captivating. And that's why I'm able to analyze it more, and that's why you're able to notice the flaws more, because it's a less like entertaining and like like grabbing film.
Well, yeah, and that's a film. That's the thing that this film lacks. Is something that grabs. Like even it's supposed to be suspenseful and tension filled, it doesn't do that to me anymore. Okay. Because like I can watch scary films like Exorcist. I've watched so many times.
Yeah, I get that.
And I know what's coming, but it still captivates me.
Yeah.
Alien. I know what's coming, and it still captivates me. This film, like what I thought captivated me, is like grabbing at a fucking cloud now.
It's just not what you like anymore in the movie.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. I think it's just that, like, as you see it more for certain films, you can't. It loses that thing that you're like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then you watch it again, you're like, eh.
So ultimately, you're just bored of it. You're tired out of it. You've seen it too many times. You're just, it's not good anymore. You got burnt out.
Yeah.
Totally all you gotta say there. So other than
even though I've seen it like once every like fucking 5 years at this point.
I have one more question.
Once
for
every
you,
like 3 probably. What?
I know you're burnt out on it, but ultimately, what'd you think of the ending? Good, bad? Just straight up ending.
Bland.
Okay. I'd say predictable, but
that's kind of what I mean by bland.
Yeah.
It's like they hint at it, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
She's gonna leave. That's gonna happen.
Yeah. Which that's actually one of the reasons why I kind of like it. It's fun. It's a movie where even though the winner wins, they don't win. So I thought it was like it's just all. It's kind of like my stepmother no longer watches the MCU movies because Endgame and Infinity War left a sour taste in her mouth because they just are always negative. It's just like once you think they start having the upper hand, something bad happens, and she hates that because that's not what superhero movies should be in her eyes. So like she just can't watch those movies.
Well,
let's not talk about this. I'm just explaining here, Dev. Fuck, now I'm off tangent. Now I can't remember what I was gonna say. It'll come to me.
Endgame, Infinity War, not liking.
Oh, and it's because it's so sad, and the ending is so like not a happy ending, and that's not something you see so often. And so I appreciated the not a happy ending. It had you think. It had we had our main character decide, like, change who she was for this person, you know? So, thought it was interesting, but also very predictable and not exciting, so.
Well, see, for me, and I'll compare it to those other films, if you're going, like, even Empire ends on a bad note, and, like, the Empire's winning.
That's one of my favorite Star Wars movies.
But it's my favorite fucking film ever.
Exactly. Because
it ends... Well, no. Not because it ends at a note, but it still ends with some hope.
Like, I love...
Because they're like, we'll still come out through the other end of this okay. That's the goal.
Yeah, there's complexity to it. And that's part of the reason I like
this one is like, oh, she has more money now, but so-and-so's...
Yeah. Yeah, I guess.
Like, there's no complexity to it. It's just shit. Like, oh, your life's officially shit because what you did to get to where you're going is now gone.
Yeah. It's almost
like everything you did is pointless. It's about Glass level, actually. Yeah, no, that's actually a good comparison because, like, Glass was just pointless at the end. There was no point to Glass because everything that happened in Glass ends because they're like, ooh, twist.
What a twist! All right. Is there any?
This is what this movie kind of does. Like, ooh, twist. Something happened at the end. Oh no! And you're like, okay, what's the point then?
Mm-hmm.
This isn't like it doesn't change her character anymore. Yeah, she's got no one left, but like, okay, what has changed in her character? We don't really see what changed in her character in the first place, other than like she's willing, like from the get go, we know that she's willing to give up on certain things to get to the ends, right?
Yeah, I get you.
She's willing to give up on things. That's all we know about her character. That's it.
Okay, we're going backwards, and I wanted to end and segue. We're going back into the conversation. I get.
Sorry.
Yeah,
you got to the end, and it doesn't matter. Like nothing in this film mattered.
Okay. Okay. So, if I were to give you 10 popcorn kernels, how many would you give? Would you rather?
4.5.
4.5. Still higher than I thought, but I could also see why.
I mean,
I was thinking at least a 4.
It's got some interesting, like, what if moments with, like, Lucas there. And I like how that scene's shot. The rest of it, though, kind of meh. There's certain things that it does all right, and I'm not gonna discredit for that, but at the same time, I've seen better. I've seen better average.
Okay. All right. So I would probably give this movie a 5.5 for me, only because it's my first viewing. It is kind of boring at times, but some of it seems pretty interesting. But it is overall just an average film. It's not like average quality. It's not like your average ending or your average like A to B to C story, but it just doesn't quite stand out above anything else to me. So, all right. Moving on. All right. We had that conversation last 20 minutes longer than I thought it would. Like, honestly, that I'm impressed with us. Good on us. Now let's talk about Ready or Not for 20 seconds and then...
That's not true. I enjoyed this film. I have a lot to talk about this in this film.
Oh, really? Would you rather I start?
I feel like you're also going to potentially be negative on this film.
I have some negatives. Not too many, but some.
Because I felt this film was fun. You want to know what this film gives me the vibes of?
What's that?
Cabin in the Woods.
I knew you would say that.
And I fucking loved Cabin in the Woods. And this film has that dark, morbid sense of humor that film has throughout the rest of this film, where it still has some tension moments and sort of horror moments, but they're also played more for laughs at the same time. And it works. It's a dark-ass fucking comedy, and I love it.
Okay. Like, my dry throat there, sorry. I would agree with you that it is a dark comedy, and I like it. However, I expected more Cabin in the Woods. Like, I thought this was a movie where they decided, yeah, let's throw some comedy into a thriller. And the comedy that they did throw in, I loved because it was morbid comedy. It wasn't like something that was like, they farted in the middle of what's happening. That's funny. No, it was like something that they treat humans so like improperly that it becomes funny. And I thought that was good, but it didn't quite go far enough for me. Because I either wanted more attention or more humor, and it was kind of right in the middle for me.
How is this film in the middle, but you're on the other one being like, oh no, the tension in this, in Would You Rather, is actually really...
The explanation is the build-up here. Sure, so, like, the tension in this movie has its moments. Like, the kitchen scene, I thought that had some pretty intense parts. I thought the gate scene also had some pretty interesting moments. most of the stuff happening in the house I didn't think was tense. I thought it was more set up for the humor. And then the ending I thought was funny, but I also wanted it to be even funnier because like at that point they're going so absurd that it just like if it it just wasn't quite, it didn't finish with that absurdity that it got to, you know. It's just
Nothing I enjoy will ever be good enough for you.
no, I guess not. Because like don't get me wrong, Dev. I did have fun with this movie. It was fun. It was definitely funny. I cracked up quite a bit. And there's definitely one scene that oh god. Oh, my hand, you know which one I'm talking about when I say hand.
Yeah.
Still hurts thinking about it. But like there are other times when like it just wasn't all quite there. Don't get me wrong, the humor that was in there definitely saved this movie for me because I did enjoy myself. It's just that the suspense wasn't quite there for me. And the only reason why I thought the suspense in the other movie was better is just because how it was laid out in the format. Like the suspense in the other movie, when something tenseful was about to happen, all things would shut down. It would just focus on that character, and it would just slowly zoom in, and all we hear is just a ticking clock constantly going, and it's just like that seems stressful. That seems tense and anxiety-inducing. All we get in this movie that's kind of like that is maybe she'll sit in a room and we hear like a step here and a step there, but ultimately like I didn't find it that bad. A lot of the tension came from like I guess self-infliction, which those, don't get me wrong, have me going, "Oh god, that hurts," but it's not like scary tense. It's just like empathic.
I would counter you with those moments inside the mansion when she's moving around without before, especially before she knows what's going on and the music just cuts and it's silence and she's moving around the house. That's tension. I
actually
because you know what's happening.
Yes, we know she doesn't. Yes. So like that could be considered tension, but I didn't find it very tense only because of the song. The song was funny to me, and like that had me feel
no, I'm talking about when the song ends.
Well, no, but the emotions from the song carried on into the next scene. Like I was still having a good time and laughing about the song by the time that the tension was starting to build up. And like sure, that could have been tense. It's just to me in that moment I just had too much fun with the countdown and what was happening with during the countdown.
See, for me, I felt as soon as it went silent and she got out of that waiter,
but that the silence,
it's an immediate tone shift that just creates an amount of tension that, because you know what's happening, in my opinion, that it just everything just shifts on the dime, which I'm cool with because that shows that you're able to shift things like that.
Shifting
I
tension.
didn't carry over that that feeling of comedic song, though, was still there potentially. It got put far back to the background as soon as everything cuts out and all you hear is walking.
Okay, see, after she gets out of the dumbwaiter, it doesn't happen for at least 5 minutes, like in the film.
No,
because
in the film maybe.
Yes. So the music stops, and then we see the family start walking around. As they're walking through places, we get a cut every once in a while of her, and then she gets out, and then things starts moving along. Then I saw the tension. Yes, it's just immediately after the music cut, I didn't feel it.
Well, I felt it too because of the fact that you have the entire family who knows this house ins and outs, walking around this house, and she's just in a goddamn dumbwaiter, and that's one of the first places people are gonna check. For one,
except they didn't.
As happens sake, Speak 101. Well, I mean, they probably didn't go to the right one. There's probably multiple throughout that house, right? And they hadn't gotten there yet, obviously. They were getting up to that area. They were probably going to check that eventually. But there's that tension of you see the cuts of her just sitting there, and everyone moving through the house, you expect that the thing's going to open not by her choice, which starts to build more tension. And then she opens it and chooses to go out, which adds more tension because you know what's out there.
To me, that's the start of the tension. Like, only in this instance. Only in this instance. Well, sure, I can be wrong to you, but to me, with the build up to that point was like ultimately kind of fun. Some of it got tense, but I didn't feel like it was I guess, yes, it did build up tension, but it wasn't like it just didn't grab my attention until she left the dumbwaiter. It's just, I don't know. It was just something, I didn't see it at the time. But I could see how others could see it, so, like, I mean, yeah. I just thought the tension itself in this movie was a little more muted. Don't get me wrong. There was very intense moments, that's 100% sure. But the comedy, to me, outweighs the tension. But it also doesn't quite sell its comedy far enough for me either. Because, like, they could have done more sick and morbid things.
I feel they did some pretty sick and morbid things, though.
They did a couple. But I don't know. I can't really explain it. It's just, in all honesty, this movie was fine. It was fun and it was enjoyable. But it just didn't quite grab me. And that could just because we have different interests in movies, Dev. You look confused like I've hurt your soul, but we always argue about what we like and what we don't like. And they're almost never the same.
I know. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know how much more morbid you could do other than, like, literally, like, having monsters in the film, which would take away from the film.
It doesn't have, like, it doesn't have to be literal monsters by any means, but, like, just what they show, like, almost if this movie had gorier moments, I probably would have laughed more. And don't get me wrong, the end is very gory, but that could have been worse. And that could have been even more hilarious. I was the first...
Personally, I'm not a huge fan of just gore for gore's sake. Mm-hmm. I know everyone gets off on that bullshit. I fucking hate it. It's stupid and annoying.
Gore for gore's sake sucks, but in this movie where the gore is played off as comedy, I would have loved it. The gore is funny in this film. And
yes! But they don't go overboard. And they do the perfect amount, in my opinion. Like, they're not just, like... They're not literally, like, hacking things off just to hack things off. Like, I feel like that they went further, that's what they would be doing. You know what I mean? Like when the first accident happens, they didn't just, like, start cutting things up. Like, cut her up because, you know, they could. As she's, you know, gargling. They let it draw out, which I felt was
that was
better.
Funny. Yes. See, that one...
And then on the second one, it makes more sense because the aunt is like, okay, I'm tired of this shit. This is the second one that's doing that. I found that funny because, you know, like, it added to the first one and took from it and went with it. Because they had very similar fates.
With the first one, I actually just saw that as tension. I didn't see the comedy in the first Maid. The second Maid with the gargling was funny. That one I thought was hilarious, and that I liked.
You can have tension and comedy in the same moment.
I get you. I'm
not saying the first one wasn't tension building. I'm saying the first one was also comedic due to the fact that, like, all of them were like, oh no, oh, and she's down there trying to, like, say something because she obviously was trying to say something but can't anymore, and she's just gargling on her own blood, and they're like, she's like, I'm so sorry, all this stuff, and, you know, like, hey, it's okay, Claire, it's okay.
Like that,
okay. It's funny, because these people,
funny,
like,
yes.
really, but it's still tension building, because, like, these people are so, like, morally fucked up, that, like, if they get their hands on our protagonist, fuck if we know what's gonna happen to them, because they're just like this death is so meaningless to them that they're kind of just treating us like a wounded animal more than like a human, which is hilarious but tension building at the same time because you're just like, what the fuck happens if they catch her?
Okay, Which I can't see that. It's just that to me, not every moment had both the comedy and the horror. Not every moment had.
Did.
Yes. I'm trying to explain it. Every time I say something, you say that's not what I'm saying. But like, yes, Dev, there are tension moments. Yes, there are comedy moments. Yes, there are both moments with tension and comedy. It's just that to me and my movie watching self, it's just it didn't all add up to the degree that I wanted. This is partially why I don't want to talk about things later on in the podcast. It's because I have high expectations when I have expectations. Like, when I first walked into this film, I thought it was going to be as funny, if not funnier, than Cabin in the Woods. And to me, it wasn't. It was okay. And that is okay. It's okay that it's an okay film. It doesn't have to be the funniest horror comedy that I've seen this summer. It's just like, I thought it was fine. It could have been more tense. It could have been more funny.
What horror comedies have you seen this summer?
We haven't. It's just that, like, every time we get into these conversations where I have, like, a slightly differing opinion, at least today, it just feels like that I have to agree with you and say, yes, you're right in this.
It's just I'm allowed to have it. Okay, why are we allowed to have a slight debate
We
about
can
things?
have a slight debate. But then when I say my thing, you're like, but then this is exactly why I have to say my thing again. And, like, yes, we can have differing opinions and debates, but then at some point we just start repeating ourselves over and over and over again. And I just want to move on. That's also not what I'm saying. If I haven't been obvious today, I had a really bad day today, and I've
had a bad week as well, so I get it.
Let's go into spoilers.
Well, we gotta rate it still.
Then let's rate it and move into spoilers. Because
I'm just saying that I'm just trying to say, like, it feels like whenever I try to have some sort of debate about anything, and yeah, sometimes I repeat my points, but it always feels like my points don't matter because whenever I reiterate them because you're like, whenever I say them,
I say my point.
Well, not that. I'm more saying, like, whenever I say them, yes, you say your point, but it always feels like you add a dismissive to my point.
Partially, I'll say sometimes I do, yes. But that's because I see
feel like I have to be defensive of my points.
Don't, though, Dev. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You don't have to be defensive. This is all opinions here.
When my points get dismissed, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just sit there with, like, my thumb up my ass and be like, okay, my point's invalid?
Your point isn't invalid, though. I'm agreeing with you, and and I can see how in some instances what you're saying is true. It's just that when it comes to me and what I'm saying, like, I just don't entirely see it at times. Like, sure, I'll be honest, like, with the last movie I said that, like, I don't see the point of your sound, so let's move on. That is something that kind of happened here. I'll be honest there completely. But, like, I still listened to what you had to say, and we talked about that sound for 15 minutes, and then we moved on.
It's about maybe
8 minutes, sure. And, like,
but at the time, too, like, the entire time I was talking about it, the entire time I talked about it, it was, well, that doesn't matter. Well, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't matter was all you were saying.
Because in my opinion, the sound doesn't matter. That's not the point of that film.
Which, I mean, fair, but the way you said it just said that, like, your point's invalid, doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
But that's not what I was meaning to say, so I apologize. And in the future...
Which puts me on a defensive.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm never trying to say you're wrong and your point doesn't matter. I'm just trying to bring up other points and what other people could say. This is critically casual. I take this critically as best I can.
I know, and I try to take it casually as best I can, but when certain issues pop up, I do have to talk about them. But when I do get a critical moment, usually it feels like those are dismissed because you have a different reason.
Okay.
Like with the audio thing, I had a critical moment, which is rare on this show, where I have a truly critical moment, and all that I was told was it doesn't matter because the film's not about that.
But we still talked about it, and I listened to everything you had to say, And it's just
Well,
that after what you
the
had
ol-
to say, you didn't change my opinion.
Well, fair, but I didn't know what your opinion was, other than that it doesn't matter. Like there was nothing for me like to talk about other than my opinion, because your opinion was that doesn't matter. That's not what the film's about.
But
That's all I understood was
yeah,
your
and
concept.
then I explained about what I thought the film was about, and we could
Well,
segue
true.
onto other things from that part of the conversation.
And
And
yes,
then
I
eventually we
admit
could
that.
circle back to sound and
Well, yes, but at the same time, talking about it at a certain point and like essentially saying that like, and I didn't know you had planned to circle back to it, but essentially just saying, don't worry about it, it doesn't matter, to a point when I finally have something critical to say, sucks. Because
now
I'm just like,
yes,
okay.
and once again, now we're repeating ourselves. I understand that you
No.
want to say things, and I understand that in that moment I shut you down, but we had already said what we needed to say, and I wanted to move on. Like, you were just saying the exact same things over and over again.
Well, I know, but there was no like back and forth, which is what we tend to do. There was no like discussion about it. It was like when there was discussion, it was just that like, well, the movie's about this, so your audio complaint doesn't matter.
So we could have talked about all the other, never mind at this point. I got my point across, I think. I understand what you're trying to say. I will try to listen better. It's just that some instances I don't agree with you. And I don't have to agree with you. And you don't have to
I
agree
don't
with me.
need you to agree with
Exactly.
me. I know.
So,
But when it's just more of a point of like, I try to listen to all your points, and I've put up with some shit
yes.
with like Infinity War and stuff like that. I listen.
And I listen
Went
too.
through with it. I know, but I don't immediately dismiss the points. I do try to add a like counter to them, and during the first movie, it felt like whenever I had a point, it was automatically just dismissed because it didn't matter. So what you felt the movie was about, like it just didn't matter what I was saying because you said that because it's about this to you. But because I had a different reasoning for it.
I still
Why?
I
know you listen, and I know you still listen. I'm not trying to say you didn't listen,
yes.
but I'm saying the way you went about it made it feel like what I was trying to say didn't matter.
Which that's just that's just something we're going to have to work on in our own lives because that's something that in our communication in general we always have a problem with. Just because I'm not agreeing with you or just because something is just not doesn't mean your opinion doesn't matter. But that's a problem we always have in just our conversations as a whole in general in all of life. Like even just playing games with each other. You have one opinion, I have another, we disagree, we start to argue every single time.
I mean, fair, but I know I can be stubborn about things. I'm not saying I'm not. But I have a problem when I do say something and it's automatically just dismissed.
But it wasn't.
Or what it feels. I know it wasn't, but it felt like it was by the way you said it, if that makes sense. Because the way, like, with this one, too, I talked about how the tension stuff was, and you said, well, I felt this, and that's why. That's why it wasn't. I know you didn't say it wasn't this, but that's how it comes off sometimes. Which...
The reasoning, like in that example, you said your reason what you thought, I said my reason what I thought, but then you started reiterating the exact same thing. It wasn't like some of it you added more to, but then you just said it again. And then again, and then I agreed with you. And then you said it again, and then I said something different. And then I agreed with you. And then like I do agree with you in a lot of these things, Dev. I really, really do. It's just I still want more. And me saying I want more is saying that sounds like right now you're saying I don't agree with you and I'm dismissing what you're saying. Like I agree with you. It's just I also want more still.
Okay, and that's fair. It's just no offense, but you say that with everything.
Because I am a cynic and I don't like modern movies. A lot of the stuff we're watching sucks to me, but I still bump it up higher. I give the movie more points than I do in most instances. Like, just because I know I'm a cynic.
and that's fair. It just sometimes it comes off as because I enjoyed it, I shouldn't enjoy it because modern cinema needs to be more. If that makes sense, is what it sometimes come off.
You
as.
can always enjoy. Everyone has a right to their own opinion. Everyone can enjoy any movie that they want, and I don't mean to tell anybody that their opinions on movies suck, and because I don't like a movie, that means you shouldn't like a movie either. That's never what I'm trying to get at. It's just...
I know. It's just sometimes we don't iterate that well.
All right.
Both of us.
So with that in mind, is there anything else we want to talk about in Ready or Not other than ratings before we hop into spoilers?
I feel like it's really shot well.
Cool.
Cinematography-wise is great, and the music's great in this film.
I did like the music. Cinematography, nothing really stood out to me in all honesty, but
I liked the car scene's cool. One, it's shot really well, in my opinion.
the in the car, or
yes,
okay. That wasn't the bad scene.
And the table scenes are cool too because they're shot really well, and there's kind of like a vertigo almost to it.
Okay.
And like when there's panic, the camera moves panically. While when there's calm and she's more in control, the camera shows that.
I was gonna say that's actually something that I had a complaint about, was how shaky the camera got at times. Because this movie, like, it did that a lot. When something got intense and dramatic, they switched to handheld, and it'd be shaky because they'd be following what's going on. But sometimes they did that in dark scenes where it's dark and it's shaky, and you just, at least I couldn't see what was going on. I couldn't entirely catch what was happening.
Fair. That's a fair thing. I enjoyed it because it did add that sense of, like, panic to the scene. Like, this sense of, like, what's gonna happen next kind of thing. So, there's that, too. That I enjoyed. That sense of, like, because the camera's the camera almost feels like it's what she sees at that time. Even though it's facing her,
yeah,
she sees what the camera's seeing in a way. Well, when she is in those moments of either high tension where like things aren't happening, but things are happening, or like in the kitchen, or when she's in control, the camera is calm, almost to either a scary degree, or to a degree that you're like, okay, she's kind of in control here. And the moment that changes, the camera sort of changes to being having motion to it instead of being still, which I appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. That is good cinematography. That's actually something I've been debating. If I ever actually make content on my own channel, simple things of cinematography like that is something I do want to talk about, because cinematography, even simple little things like just shaking the camera a little bit more depending on what's happening, really helps. It really helps the mood and it sells the scene. So, and
then the music on top of it really helped, in my opinion, because like the background music when like when it would cut out, when it would be the tension scenes, I love that kind of audio cue. Like the moment because there might be background music playing through the thing, and then as soon as the audio cue stops, your hair starts to raise because you're like, there was that comfort, even if the music wasn't comforting.
No, yeah,
it was something there.
Yeah, that's something that they do a lot in movies, actually. Horror and sound is extremely important.
And I feel like out of the horror movies we've seen this year, having been 8 months into the year, this is a film, despite it not really trying to be a horror film, it does that better than half the horror films we've seen this year. With audio cues.
I'd say so, yeah. It's got the suspense thriller that everyone loves. Like, that's one thing about horror movies, is they're supposed to be suspenseful and thrilling. And, like, this is thrilling. It's definitely suspenseful. It's not always scary, and it's definitely funny.
Yeah. It's a horror comedy, is the best way to put it. Which, is one of my favorite movies is Cabin in the Woods, which is a horror comedy, and it works because it kind of plays off of the tropes, making them a little bit funnier, but also still keeping some of the suspense and that like, oh man, I wonder what's actually going to happen kind of thing. And setting up the right foreshadowings and the cues to what's about to happen, like, and setting that up. And this film does that really well, similar to what Cabin in the Woods does, in my opinion. They set certain things up really well. And it's sad to say that, like, horror comedy is doing better than the actual horror films this year, because, like, even Us has some fucking funny moments.
Well, I mean, I relate that to just in general. What is the biggest kind of movie in the box office right now? Action comedy. Like, comedy
Really?
is... Yeah. Most action movies have comedy in them.
Well, yes, but I wouldn't
that's
consider...
what sells them.
Like, because you need levity to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess.
Like...
Well, I wouldn't consider them
only-
all like our Mission Impossibles
I
and
was
stuff
about
like
to,
that.
No, I was about to say the only movies where it's not really action comedy would be Mission Impossible and John Wick. Those were literally what I was about to say. But most of the other movies, like even Avengers, they're action and they're comedy. Hobbs and Shaw, action and comedy. A lot of big popular movies lately are action pieces that fill in the action with comedy. What else does it work with? It's just good. So like horror is the same thing. Horror just works well in comedy because they're completely different moods, but they're a very similar build-up. So
yes, and I can agree with that. And I think that's one of the problems with other, like, I don't want to say that's a problem with other horror films, but the problem right now with horror films in general is that, like, they lean into tropes that have been made fun of now, even in better horror films.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they go for the same tropes we've seen before. Like, we've talked about them with some of the films we've seen. Like, Curse of La Llorona was one of those films that, like, tried to be so clichély scary that the entire time we're sitting there like, what the fuck are you actually doing?
Yeah,
there was one a couple weeks ago. What was it that we watched? Like, hold on, I have the schedule up. I can go back to last month. There was one last month that we watched, right? Or was the month before? June. There was a couple in June. Annabelle and Child's Play. Like, Child's Play had some funny moments of levity that kind of worked, but at the same time, it wasn't great. And Annabelle was just this horror trope 101 film. And it's like this entire year that we've seen, like, horror films, the levity moments really add to them with, like, Us and this one. So, like, I don't know. It's just, it's weird to see that the horror genre is doing better with funny than it is with itself.
Mm.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
I guess what it is really is just it's all experimental. Horror itself only really does well when it's trying to do something different, and at least that's my opinion. Horror,
I can agree with that.
Yeah, like there was like the first Freddy movie, the first Jason movie. Those were interesting because they were like slashers and new takes on slashers. But after like Freddy 5 and Jason 6 or whatever the hell they're technically called, I know what they're technically called, but whatever. They got boring. And then every other slasher movie after those, they were also boring because they were just following that same format. And then we switched over to like supernatural movies and everything that's like being possession. And then I was like, oh, that's new and that's interesting. And it got scary again. And then
we got into found footage.
Yes, exactly.
Which still feel like Blair Witch and Paranormal
Blair Witch did it
Activity?
well, in my opinion.
Blair Witch did it all right.
Paranormal did not.
Paranormal Activity just bored the shit out of me on the first one. Mm-hmm. I've never finished that film because I was falling asleep. Like, our friends were like, hey, watch this film, and we're gonna, you and your brother watch this film. We're gonna close the door and turn off lights. You guys have fun because we've already watched it. Sat there for like half of the film. I'm like, dude, nothing's fucking happening. I'm done. I walked out and they're like, oh, did you get scared? I'm like, no, I'm bored out of my fucking mind. Let's do something. Because the film just drags.
Yeah.
And then we got into and then we had Conjuring, which was interesting. Like, the first two Conjuring films did kind of different things. Like, they played off of tropes in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Like, I loved the first Conjuring movie. That was good to me. I really liked
Conjuring
it.
2 was. I actually liked Conjuring 2. I went to theaters on a date for that and was like, all right, just give me your cliche horror film. But like they set up a whole thing at the end that was gonna happen, like, oh, someone might die at the end kind of thing. And I expected it to happen at several points. And then they just didn't. And they're like, yeah, we're just not gonna do that thing we've been setting up for the entire film. And I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of it's subverting my expectation of you film, like, because it even ends like, and you're like, is it not actually going to happen, kind of thing? Huh. And then we got Get Out and Us, which are very different types of horror films,
Mm-hmm.
and even Halloween, which is Halloween 2, titled Halloween, though similar to a lot of slasher films, was a almost like true to form and almost like a reinterpreting of slasher.
I was about to say, at that point, it's because it's been so long since we had a true to form slasher. It felt like a fresher breath air, but
It did.
but at the same time,
It's not.
if you compared it to other slashers, it was kind of eh.
Which we did to the original Halloween, which we liked the original Halloween better.
Yeah,
But like it still worked. Like it worked good. So like this one, and this one in Cabin in the Woods, in my opinion, which I kind of wish we would have watched Cabin in the Woods at this point with it. It was definitely a very different take on horror, and I like this. I enjoy this kind of stuff. I'm gonna throw you 10 popcorns because I'm gonna ramble for a moment.
okay.
If I don't.
With my 10 popcorn kernels, I'm going to give Ready or Not.
I'm going 8.5. Fair. I swear if we look back at the ratings and this is below one of those goddamn awful horror films, Steven, I'm gonna be upset. Alright, that's fair. Rounded up to an 8. That makes me feel better. Gives it a better chance of not ending up below any of the goddamn horror films we've watched.
Let's get ready to spoiler!
Lightly. The kills in this movie were fun. I mean, I still felt like, okay, even if we had taken, I'll say this. One, that it would have had to been a shotgun to blow off half the first maid's face, okay? No, they're not. No, they're not. Not that kind of flintlock pistol that she had. There's no way that would do. Even like a regular flintlock pistol would not have done that damage that you're proclaiming. True, but I'm more saying like if we have broken that rule of reality, it become like yeah, it would have been more absurd, but like at what cost? Like, well, in my opinion, it would have just been gore for gore's sakes. In my honest opinion, like having the face like disfigured from the fact that a bullet just went in and probably bounced around in her head because that's what that kind of like round does is far more entertaining to me because I know how that kind of firearm works. And the fact that she's just like disfigured on this part of her head because like part of her skull has essentially shot this way back out from just ricocheting in her brain adds to that. And the crossbow through the other girl's throat was funny as hell because it's just like they're in like it's just sudden cuts off. And then the third one I felt was funny too because it was like it was karmatic. Well, it's also because it's slow. It's slow as hell, and she does it to herself, which is kind of karmatic because she's about like Grace, our main character. Which, by the way, Samara is that how you say it? Miss Weaving? He's fucking fantastic. By the way, I fucking love her because she's also able to do this like kind of role of this like in another film with the guy who plays Glenn from Walking Dead. Where she's just like on the cusp of completely unhinged. And it's well, even in like other parts of the film, like she's like it's like she's slowly losing her fucking mind in this scenario. And I fucking love like you see that process just slowly happening, like just with like just facial expression from her. Which is being able to like act and express through just facial expression is great, and I love it. And she fucking nails it, in my opinion, because she like someone said she could be Harley Quinn. She could be a better Harley Quinn, honestly. That like hinge of just like walking that tightrope of insanity that Harley walks. And by Harley, I mean the Harley that's past Joker. No, they're not. She's unhinged in a very different way. But like if this was Harley from like more modern comics, she would be perfect in that role because like just and this movie alone proves it because she's just able to like go for like she's able to go from like calm and collected and slowly lose like we see this insanity brew to where in the end of the film she's seriously just grunting and but it's so emotionally powerful just because of how she expresses it on her face. Like it's so good. And then the end of the film happens when like the ant is about to try to kill her and just pops and she just suddenly has this moment of oh shit, I'm in control. I have the power suddenly. And like you see that insanity, she accepts the insanity and just kind of rolls with it at that point. Because what she's saying is fucking bonkers as shit. And she's just laughing about it. Which is just it's great in my opinion. I haven't watched anything else she's in, but I'm probably going to go back and see stuff she's in because just this performance alone, like I loved it in my opinion, which is awesome in my opinion because if you're able to sell, if you're as an actor or actress
able to sell me on like seeing other pictures you're in just based off of one goddamn role, and like the other two films that I've kind of heard of are Mayhem and Babysitter that she's been in, and I just kind of missed them. I'm probably gonna go back and watch those now, and she's gonna be in Bill and Ted Face the Music too. I doubt she's gonna be like this kind of character, but she's gonna be like Bill Preston's daughter. It looks like, which is gonna be fucking hilarious. But like I'm excited to see her in more things just based off of this. Like she's got chops is the best way to put it. Like she's able to like just she's got a spectrum of power. Yes, they casted very well. You cut out for me?
I've lost everything.
Uh-oh.
Give me a second. It'll come back.
This looks weird.
Doesn't it? This is what the show looks like without all the overlays. Isn't it lovely? Hey, you want to see what our talk screen looks like? There we go. Wait, hang on. This is what it looks like right after we start things. This is what it looks like when we're on the opening screen. Yeah, do you see all the differences here? Why isn't this working?
Did you turn off and on the overlay again? Oh, fair. Still says we're live. Yeah, we are definitely laggy, but it's back, so. Oh, we're kind of in and out now.
Mike's back. Stream doesn't want to catch up.
It'll be back eventually. We'll move at some point.
That's
Or
all.
we're just still images of ourselves. Oh, I saw movement. We're moving. We're coming through. Wait for it.
I don't know what's happening. I can't reboot this. There's no, unless I stop cast in the middle of the show just to refresh the connection. Who would do that? Here we go.
Hello.
Suddenly,
Alright, so what we were saying, end of this film's fucking great.
yes. So, the end of the film that I enjoyed. Like, this was the moment where I was like, finally, something ridiculous is happening. Just what I wanted this whole fucking time. Like, that was. I really enjoyed the ending of this film. It felt good. I had a happy time with it, especially watching the Coke woman and her 2 children explode. Ah, oh, that was funny.
Fair. I personally, like, I loved it because it was just so, like, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but, like, they did such a good job of building that tension of nothing's actually gonna happen thing, and then letting it happen. Like, they did that to the perfect degree, in my opinion. Like, they built that moment up being like, oh, it's all bullshit. Oh. And, like, you still kind of are like, is it though?
Yeah, you
But,
don't
like, they
really
just,
know.
They drag it out just long enough that you're like, maybe it is bullshit. All right, you know, then.
Part of me actually wonders if, like, she didn't go after the girl after sunlight came up, like, if they would have survived. Like, if they just let her leave.
I think so. I think they would have been fine. But, you know, the dude has a deal. Hey, she survived. She's part of the family. Oh, you decided to try to kill her? Pop, 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 motherfuckers. And I appreciated seeing Satan at the end.
Right? Just for that brief flash. And she's like, well, shit. Or will fuck, or
Well,
whatever.
fuck.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, this movie says fuck a lot, but it's not gratuitous. Like, it feels, every time fuck is said, it's very much like that makes sense. You would say fuck at that moment. Like, there's never a fuck that's just like, fuck, 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 fuck. It's, fuck. Or like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it'll.
Kind of things. Like, it's a very, like, a moment where someone would say, fuck.
Oh God.
It's very rare that we find films that use fuck and use it in a way.
It's a natural use and not not a just for expletive sakes use.
Yeah, which is rare but awesome. And I loved it. I loved the use of fuck in this film because it felt so goddamn natural anytime it was said. And I'm just like, huh, that makes sense. Also, fucking child kills in this film / punching. Didn't expect that.
The child punching was actually another one of my favorite moments because it was so unexpected. Like, you're like,
But it was such a natural reaction.
yeah, that's what I would have done in that instance too. I would have
Same.
socked the child.
Which, such a good hook. But damn, like, you just,
Yeah.
you don't expect it, but like, it happens and you're like, yeah, I would have done the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
And I loved how, like, we didn't see their deaths, but like, they're run off and all of a sudden, pa pa pa,
Yeah, that
back
was
into
what
the
I
room.
loved. Like, a lot of the death that they did, like, every once in a while they'd show a death that was, like, gratuitous. And and then at the end they showed, like, they just hinted at the death of the kids, which I thought was good. Like, they weren't gonna just blatantly kill them on screen because that would move the rating up a little bit higher somewhere.
Well,
like,
it's already an R.
it's already
so-
R, but it's not a hard R quite yet.
Well, I don't. It's,
That would make
close
it a
to
hard
on
R.
How much it says fuck,
Yeah.
but
Like, blowing up the kids on screen would have made the movie, like, almost NC-17.
probably.
So,
Um,
but, like, it was just, the explosions were the best part to me because it was so absurd and out of nowhere, and it was kind of hinted at, like, what could happen with them, and, like, you don't want to know what happened with the other family that struck a deal with the devil, and, like, and we got to see what happened. They exploded literally everywhere like water balloons, and it was funny. However, where it could have been more gratuitous is the amount of chunks. Like, at the end, we get a single chunk that falls back on the table. What if, like, at the end, just basically a whole body falls instead? Like, or just...
I feel like that would have just taken away from it because I like the fact that they were pretty much atomized. Like, I prefer that, honestly, because, like, especially with, like, Alex at the end, that was one of those ones that she just gets covered with it. And I feel like if there was, like, chunks in it, it wouldn't be as good. You know what I mean? Like, there would just be chunks on her, which would take away from just, like, that it's kind of like getting slimed on Nickelodeon. Like, she essentially got blood slimed, and she's like,
Like, but I'm
and then the flames happen, she's like, well, fuck.
Like, I'm imagining the same thing, essentially. Only the difference of her, like, doing the whole, like, licking her lips and, like, drying off the blood around her mouth. It's, like, maybe a chunk or two, and she, like, spits out a piece of Alex or something. Like, she's like, like,
Maybe,
essentially
I
the
don't know.
same thing, just a little bit further. And, like, who knows?
I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of those
I
moments.
getcha. Okay,
So.
we spoiled all the deaths at the end. Oh, want to know one moment that really pissed me off? I would have done the exact same thing as... Ooh, sorry, hiccup, or burp up. I would have done the exact same thing as Grace in this movie, which was as she gets out the gate and the guy just yells at her to get out of the road. It's like, fuck you, you piece of shit. Like,
That was hilarious.
yes, it was, but God, like, I've been
It
watching.
shows how. Let's be honest. That would actually fucking happen in
Yes,
real life.
it would. It really, so No, I'm not going to get political right now. People. I don't like people sometimes. Especially rich people. They think they're above everybody. So that's especially why I didn't like this movie. All those rich people think they're better than everybody, you know? All this hard sarcasm I have in my voice here. Can't you tell?
Well, I liked some of the lines at the end.
In-laws.
Like, well, not just that one. I was going to get to that one, but I want a divorce. Boom. Like, that was such a good moment. That was such a power moment. And I'm just like, you've earned that, Grace. Well done. Because, like, Alex's turn is hinted at throughout the film.
It is, and I enjoyed it. Like,
Yeah.
Like, I actually, there's a moment there where it seems like even though they went through hell, or Alex or Grace went through hell, she might still be with Alex at the end of all of this. There's a moment there. And then when he switches sides for real and he actually decides that he's going to kill her because he watched his dad or his brother and his mom die already. Like,
His brother dying's on him. Like, on the brother. Not on Grace.
yes. The mother dying
Brother?
is a little on Grace, however.
That's on the mom, too. She
Yes.
decided to go hand-to-hand combat with this girl. Don't do that, apparently.
When you're fighting for your life, you'll kill anything. So,
And you'll go a little primal with it.
I did like the one line. It was like, "Did you kill him? No, they'll just be shitting weird for a week." Like,
Yeah.
that was funny. A lot of it's just like, I guess the more lowbrow it gets in this, I almost enjoy it more. But I don't like potty humor.
It's earned lowbrow, almost. Which is weird to say, because usually lowbrow, you can't earn lowbrow. This film earns a couple lowbrow moments, where it's like, they'll just be shitting weird for a week. And you're like,
Alright.
kind of funny. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Not only gonna say all right, but all right. Okay. So, good on them.
Alright. I've really got nothing else I want to talk about in spoilers, only because we really went in depth in both of these movies during just our non-spoiler talk. Like, we talked about a lot of what we would normally say in our like spoiler stuff, just without the spoilers. I'm impressed with us.
Well, that's normally what we try to do.
And we didn't do it normally, but we did it this time. Congrats us. Is there any else, like any moment that really has to be talked about here?
I think we talked about it all pretty well.
Sounds like somebody got a knife in the booty. I wonder where they're at in the stream.
No one got a knife in the booty. No, they're caught back up after you rebooted it.
Knife in the
No one got a knife in the booty. That's not what we mean by lowbrow humor. It's just like offhand jokes that kind of work.
Mm-hmm. All right. News time. So, yeah, we're done spoiling here. Oh, bad transition, but whatever. We're moving into the news, and I forgot to pull up the articles again, because I'm really good at this. So don't mind the broken screen while I scroll through our stuff and grab the stuff that's important. There we go. Perfect. All right. Nice. All right. So the news. There's a couple things we could talk about this week. The first... Oop, that's not the one I wanted. Hold up. Let me break the stream again. 1 second. Where did you post your thing? Where did it go? Was it a private message?
What thing?
Spoderman.
Oh, that was bullshit.
Oh, okay. Didn't even look at it. I just assumed you read it. Okay, well, there's a couple of things in the news that's been happening lately. One of them, if you hadn't heard, is Spider-Man. So, this is something I wanted to talk to you about only because I'm interested. And we did talk about it a little bit on Thursday's podcast, the Har Har podcast. But that's why I want to just kind of quickly touch up on it here, and then we can move on. Marvel and Sony kind of in the middle of a falling out. Yeah, you'd say, or have they completely fallen out at this point?
Well, there's still chance for a deal, despite what IGN's saying. We're like, there's no way Spider-Man gets the MCU ever again. That's bullshit, because there's still a chance that they come back with a deal at some point. Mm-hmm. We don't know when, but they can.
Have you picked a side at this point? Like, other than the
people?
There's no
side to choose.
Yeah. Do you pick one billionaire company, or like, because ultimately you essentially we're picking sides here no matter what. Like,
I'm not.
So what would you prefer? Like, what would you prefer? Like, just not saying Disney wins or Sony wins. Like, what would you prefer would be the desired outcome with Spider-Man?
Spider-Man stays in the MCU.
Okay, that means Disney wins.
No. Disney can just come up with a different deal that isn't 50% of all of it.
But it's Disney, and the people love Disney. Like, Disney's playing the We're Your Childhood Memories card, and they're trying to take away your Spider-Man. Rise up against Sony.
Okay.
I
don't care, which is bullshit, because they're the ones who caused the situation in the first place.
Exactly. Like, if I had to choose sides, I would side with Sony, in all honesty. Because...
I'm not going to choose a side because both of them are fucking idiots.
Sony
has yet to make a good trilogy of Spider-Man films. Mm-hmm. Without outside influence, okay? Their third film of the Sam Raimi trilogy, third one falls apart because studio meddling. Sony meddling, by the way. Amazing Spider-Man 2 falls apart because of Sony meddling. They knock it out pretty well with firsts. I'll admit that. Like, all of their firsts of any of their franchises of Spider-Man are good, in my opinion.
Okay.
They're enjoyable films. And the problem, too, is Tom Holland's Spider-Man is so ingrained in the MCU.
Without it, would be bad. Like,
I saw an article through Screen Rant being like, well, this means we can finally get a good Spider-Man movie. And I'm like, the fuck do you mean, man? Spider-Man in the comics is so, like, even in his solo comics, he's so intertwined with everyone else that his solo comics have cameos all the goddamn time. Mm-hmm. And it's part of who he is because he has so many relationships because he's Spider-Man. He's such a good guy that even when people, even when, like, J. Jonah Jameson treats him like shit, everyone else who actually gets to know him is like, you're a good person, Spider-Man / Peter Parker. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm still around. That's why, Johnny Storm shows all the time. That's why he has friends like Bobby Drake. That's why he's friends with Wolverine, Captain America, Iron Man, Reed Richards. He's got so many fucking friends in the Marvel Comics. And to take him away from that takes away from the fact that he is Spider-Man and that people care to be around him. Even if they have way better powers than him or way smarter than him or whatever. He's Spider-Man. He's so unique. He's so kind. He's a moral compass to the MCU or to the Marvel Comics in so many ways that, like, he almost guides heroes who have been doing it longer.
A couple counterpoints. Doesn't mean I'm disagreeing with you. Just devil's advocate here. Thought one. Part of the reason I think Screen Rant wrote that they don't like the Spider-Man movies, or they think that there's actually going to be a good Spider-Man movie, is because I could see arguments that this Spider-Man isn't true to comic Spider-Man. It's the closest we've gotten, but he's also just mini Tony Stark. He's not... But I could see how other people don't say he is, but just in general, I can also see the argument and how people say that everything about him is there. There's still more, but yes. Go ahead.
Well, my counter to that argument is that then watch the film and look at the character's arc. Yes, Tony Stark plays a hand in how this character's arc, but it's more of a mentoring hand. Peter still develops as his own person. He's still different from Tony Stark. And that was what the whole fucking second film was about. That Peter Parker just needs to be Spider-Man. He doesn't need to be Iron Man.
Well, yes. But in the comics, Does he? How was most? Okay, in the comics, does he get access to a satellite that can launch drones from space? How many suits does he get from Iron Man? How many of his villains are ex-Stark employees? Like,
Okay, yes, there's that tie-in, but that also in the MCU universe makes it tie together, in my opinion, better. Because from a cinematic standpoint, it makes sense because these are threads that you tie through.
Yes.
Like the fact that like the Ten Rings is going to be a major point in one of the new MCU films of a completely new property that ties these threads together. That would be what would be done in comics too, because comics do that all the time.
Yeah.
One of Spider-Man's best villains is Kingpin. Oh, he's also one of Deadpool's best or Daredevil's best villains.
Yeah.
Of all time in the comics. And that's fine, in my opinion, having these interlooping characters who are tied to certain other characters. That's fine. And the fact is, he gets 2 suits. He builds 2 others himself. Yeah, he uses some technology he has access to, but he does that in the comics all the fucking time. He's like, hey, I got access to this technology now. I'm going to build a suit based off of having this access to it now. That's why, like, in Spider-Man, the Marvel game, Marvel Spider-Man vs. PS4, you have so many fucking suits in that game. He's built and gotten half of those suits. Like, it's a 50-50, which is what he's at right now, by the way.
I get that. I don't mean to get you
I'm not
heated.
saying that this isn't, this isn't directed towards you. This is directed towards that argument.
Okay.
It's saying, like, oh,
Next
he hasn't
argument.
done anything on his own.
Okay.
I'm like, watch the fucking film and tell me that.
Okay. Next argument. You would rather Spider-Man stay in the MCU. I can understand that. However, Sony owns Spider-Man and all of his movies. Technically, they have every right to say, no, Marvel, you cannot have 50% of the profits from this movie, or, like, you can't have some blank credit or blah, 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 because we own the movie. And Disney came out and said, we want 50% or else we're going to turn the people against you. And the people have been turned against Sony.
I feel there's more turning against Disney day by day as they look into it, if they look into it.
But that's if people look into it. Not everybody will.
I know. Let me finish.
Okay.
I'm more saying that Disney, I'm not saying Disney's in the right, okay? They're both in the wrong here. Sony has the right to pull out, yes. But them pulling out is going to hurt this Spider-Man in so many ways.
But it doesn't have to be the Spider-Man. Like, they could literally just start over again if they wanted to. Or they can go to Andrew Garfield and do his 3rd movie. Like they could have done. Like, they have more options if they just take back Spider-Man. They could even throw him in with Venom, which would be terrible, but it's an option.
Into what?
With a Venom somewhere, which is terrible.
Well, the problem is they're going to do that.
Yes.
They're going to throw him into that. They're going to throw him into Morbius. They're going to throw him into these things that are not going to be good. Because, like, no offense, Venom 2, even though Andy Sudeikis is directing it, and he's goddamn fantastic, it's Venom 2. I'm sorry, but the first one
wasn't very good.
Was an film. As we put it, it was a 2000 superhero film. But we're not in the 2000s anymore. Well, and to add to Jason's point, the problem is Disney wants to have more money.
Oh yes.
Which I can understand wanting to have more money. You're essentially putting your big head of this studio on this film, which you don't make much money off of. You make 5% of opening day.
You make 5% of opening day, but you also have all rights to merchandising, which some would argue is more than what a movie would make.
True, but that's not what he's being paid to do. He's not in charge of the toys or manufacturing. That's a different person entirely.
Yes.
Kevin Feige's in charge of movie stuff, and you're shelling out the dude who's in charge of all of your Marvel films, right?
Mm-hmm.
For not much in return, compared to what what his normal rate probably is at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He probably gets paid a lot to be doing what he's doing right now.
Actually, quick side tangent. We don't have to stick on this. I'm actually curious in how much longer he will keep doing this, because at some point he has to step down. Like, it's just guaranteed he has to. That's how time works. So who's going to take the MCU after him? Then what changes are going to happen? Like, I have so many questions about post Feige MCU, but that's not what's important right now. Go ahead.
We'll debate that later. No, my thing is, like, I understand why Marvel Studios / Disney wants more money out of it. I understand, because you're shelling out the face of the MCU, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But 50% is a little fucking ridiculous.
Absolutely.
When you already have what you have already with the toys, merchandise, and stuff like that. On the other hand, Sony's also being ridiculous by essentially not... Like, they're both being ridiculous for not seemingly renegotiating and just letting this fall to public.
Mm-hmm. I think it all... And I honestly don't know how it worked out, because the way I saw multiple stories, but it all basically boiled down to Disney is the one who released the information to the press. Sony was, the way I saw it, was Sony still had plans about continuing communications. It's just that the Sony creative director walked out while all the other Sony employees were like, hey, he's being grumpy, we'll talk to you later. But then Disney's like, run an article that said Sony says no, so we're pulling out, and that gets the people against it. It's just, that's the way I read it. That's the way I saw everything. And it's just big old Disney, who's this mega conglomerate that's trying to take over everything, is just flexing their power, is what I saw. And I don't like that.
I don't like it either, but it's the situation we deal with now.
But that being said, if I had to, like, if there was a whole thing where it was like, pick a side, Sony versus Disney, I would pick Sony, because I feel like Disney is just being abusive of whatever power that they have, and they're just trying to take advantage of another company. That's all it is, and I don't like that. I don't like anybody taking advantage of anybody, so simple as that.
I just believe it's a dumb situation overall.
I would...
Like, both of them are in the wrong. Let's just get over it. This Spider-Man deserves to be in the MCU. He's super important to it. I know he can be replaced at this point, given some of the characters that have been announced over D23 this weekend.
It's a lot of news at D23.
But I don't want to see him get replaced. So, let's fix that, please.
Okay. Couple of announcements. I mean, I have nothing else to talk about on this topic, so I'm going to move on. There was D23, which had a bunch of things that were announced, like an update to Epcot Center, and a Moana being added into some Disney parks. There was new Star Wars parks that are being opened. There's Star Wars announcements, which Dev wanted to talk about Star Wars theories, but I told him no, we're not doing that today, so he could talk to you guys about his theories somewhere else at some other time. There was an announcement for, like, Black Panther, for what, like, dates confirmed. Basically, there's a lot of news in D23. We could cover it. I don't really feel like we really need to get into everything, because it's really just Googleable. But check it out. A lot of stuff. Black Panther.
I got nothing.
Yeah. The only other thing that I have is next month's
what
movies.
I was going to talk about today.
D23?
Yeah.
Well,
and one other thing.
We can talk about stuff in there specifically. It's just, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about, and we've already been 2 hours long. Normally we're only an hour and a half.
I want to say, that we have some really cool announcements coming out from there, based off of, like, some added more, like...
Let us know, Dev. Let me know. What announcements do we have from D23 that you're really excited about?
Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel.
Cool.
Those are 3 that are really cool. I do love the reaction to She-Hulk, because there are people like, oh no, part of me has a humorous bone for the people who are like, oh no, they're SJW bullshit. I fucking get a kick out of those idiots, because usually they're wrong. Especially with this one with She-Hulk, where they're like, man, they're just trying to replace all of the characters with female versions. Because, like, female Thor's happening, She-Hulk's happening. She's not even, like, where'd she even come from? Like, they're just making this character up kind of thing. But if you even have just an idea of comics, She-Hulk's been around for a while. Like, a while.
One of my favorite comic arcs is Planet Hulk, which happens when Hulk rapes She-Hulk, so, like, hey.
That's not that.
Well, either way, one of my favorite timelines.
Old Man Logan.
Yeah, Old Man Logan, then, where there's just Hulks everywhere because She-Hulk and regular Hulk didn't have a good time.
Completely different arc. But, like, She-Hulk's a really awesome character. In my opinion, and she's gonna be cool addition. Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel is gonna be an awesome powerhouse in there, and she can add to the Inhuman branch and maybe repair that, beyond just having Quake in Agents of Shield. And of course, Moon Knight's gonna be this crazy motherfucking show, with the fact that like, he literally one of the best memes of Moon Knight is him yelling at Dracula to give me my money. Where's my fucking money, Dracula? It's something that happens, and with Blade coming in there, this is entirely possible now. Plus, we got footage of the Mandalore, which looks cool as hell. We got a trailer for Rise of the Skywalker. We've got posters for Black Widow and WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, showing off more stuff from that. We got to see like Red Commando from the Black Widow poster. Who's like the Captain America for Soviet Russia. A cool character. And he's played by Hellboy from the new Hellboy stuff, who's a great actor. David something.
Played in
so
Stranger
he's playing
Things.
this. Yeah. So that's cool. And we got a lot of other stuff. I'm not going to go into details because if I get into details, I'm going to get in trouble.
That you are.
There's a lot of cool things that I'm really excited because there's a lot of stuff that I'm excited to see. So there's that.
I'm just not excited for Disney in general myself, but I am excited at the same time. They have good stuff.
Oh, I'm sold. Oh, like they have Lady and the Tramp coming and stuff like that.
I'm just mad about. Like, you know my opinions on remakes.
I know. We're still probably gonna watch it.
I know, which also makes me upset, but whatever.
Other news that I want to talk about though, and why I switched to a different shirt instead, because I'm not gonna be able to talk about one thing. Might as well talk about something else.
I love how you're trying to show off the shirt, but I have you cropped in, so you kind of can't.
Well, I showed it off enough. They saw the Heisenberg. Netflix is doing the movie for Breaking Bad. El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie, which takes place like shortly after the series.
I'm a little upset depending on what they choose to do, because
It's gonna follow Jesse Pinkman.
That's fine. But depending on what they do with crap, what's his name?
Walter White?
Thank you. Walter White. I'm having a real hard time today. But what they do with Walter White is, like, depending on what they do with him, things will be fine. If it's just Jesse and, like, him trying to establish an empire, sure, maybe.
He's not going to go and establish an empire. It's going to be him trying to live.
Well, even that is going to be fun. Like, as long as they stay away from Walter White. Like, I don't want them to, like, maybe mention him once or twice, but leave it ambiguous. Like, don't let us know if he's dead or alive, kind of thing.
Well, that's what Better Call Saul does.
Like, Better Call Saul's a prequel.
Yeah, but it has flashes to the forward.
Okay. Like, either way, I haven't seen Better Call Saul, so.
I've seen bits and pieces. I still need to watch through it. But from what I've seen, it does have flashes to the future.
Okay. It's just like, It's just I think like part of the reason I loved the ending of Breaking Bad is also the reason why I like the ending of Inception. And it's just that they left the ending ambiguous. It's you get to decide what happened at that point, and you get to mull over what you think could happen. And I like that. It's just hopefully they don't change too much. But I do like Breaking Bad. It's one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And I want to watch it again just with people so I can discuss what's happening in the episodes because it's a good show. My parents won't watch it with me, but
I wonder why.
it's because it's about drugs. And drugs are bad, okay?
Well, no, I'm more just making jokes off other stuff.
So, yeah. I do want to. I look forward to it. Just don't talk about Walter White. Any other things before I show up next month's movies?
Oh, that's it. That's all I got.
All right. So I've got nothing else either. We've got next month's movies, which I did a pretty poor poster, but it works. It's bonus week 3. Where you buy a couple movies, you get your watch 4 weeks of movies, you get your 5th week free. We're starting off first weekend, September 2nd, with the original It 1990, and It Part 2, which also came out in 1990, just later, only on TV. Then the week after that, we have September 9th with the brand new It from 1970, or from 2017. Those are the words I'm thinking of. And then It Part 2, which comes out that week. The third week, I've just been doing it all from memory, so now I'm gonna look again.
Batman, Hush, and Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans. And then we got Rambo First Blood, Last Blood, and then the week after that is Shrek and Abominable.
Yes. So next month looks like it's gonna be fun. 2 of those movies I know, 4 of these movies I know are pretty good. So I'm not sad. The others, we'll figure it out later. So, unless there's anything else here, are we done?
That's about it.
All right, we're done here. So, goddamn transitions up. Grump. Didn't work. All right. Thank you for joining us this week, everybody, for this week's episode of Critically Casual. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, ding the bell, all that fun stuff. Catch us on Discord. We have a Discord now where we talk about everything that goes on and all the fun stuff. We'll check us out on Twitter because Twitter's cool and we update you sometimes there. We do our best to remember. Mondays we have Critically Casual. It's either going to be at 5 or 6. Lately it's been at 6 only because I'm poor at planning. Tuesdays catch Third Player Optional because K4J is awesome and talking about video games is cool and I'm just not very good at it. So watch someone who's good at talking about what he does. Wednesday is Hardcore Game Night where we compete against each other for the title of Hardcore Game Night Champion. That's fun. And then Thursdays is a podcast hosted by Dev. The Har Har Podcast where we just talk about whatever we want. Whatever gets our Hars going. So.
About it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for joining us this week, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this kind of long episode of Critically Casual with one minor interruption in the middle. And we will see you guys next Monday with It's and It's and a little bit more of it. And some sewers, maybe. Bye.